Hello everyone. Bonjour à tout le monde. Alors, si vous voulez utiliser l'interprétation,
If you want interpretation, you can click on the button at the bottom of the screen, which resembles a globe, which is labeled interpretation, and you can select the language that you'd like to listen to.
if you would like to take advantage of the interpretation function, please click on the button that looks like a globe at the bottom of your screen and choose the language you would like to listen to it in. If you are on an iPad like I am, it's the three dots in the top right corner. There is a language interpretation feature. Wonderful. Okay, thank you so much for joining us today for the peer-to-peer final presentation. I am thrilled that we have our top two teams here who will be sharing with us the work that they put together over the past few months. And it is truly impressive. Great, innovative work that will hopefully lead us towards our goal of making France and the entire world a safer place for everyone. I'm also very happy to introduce our keynote speaker today, Mr. Irfan Saeed, who is the acting deputy coordinator for the Counterterrorism Bureau in the Department of State. Mr. Saeed has worked in the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Justice, Department of State, so he brings a truly interagency perspective to what we're talking about today. And also actually created a community engagement office when he was working at the US Embassy in Islamabad, Pakistan, which was one of the first ones, or possibly the first one, to really bring public diplomacy perspectives, which is what we're talking about today, into this fight against violent extremism and counterterrorism writ large. So I am very happy to introduce him. Over to you.
Thank you, Jessica, and good morning, everyone. Just make sure that everyone can hear me and see me, correct? I've spent many a Zoom webinars talking into a camera only to have someone tell me later we couldn't hear a word you said. So I'm very grateful for the comms team and the work that was done behind the scenes to ensure that we can all be seen and see each other. First, let me say good afternoon to you all there in Paris and around France. Good morning here from the United States. It is an absolute pleasure to be with you guys this morning, and I really look forward to the presentations and what you've produced over the last couple of months. For me, this is the highlight of my day. This is the highlight of my year, really, because I'm such a big fan of this program and all of the good work that we see come out of this program. I just wanted to say a few words off the bat, but before I do that, I wanted to start with some thanks. Obviously, we have to thank our sponsors, McCain Institute, and of course, Adventure Partners, and our great colleagues at the US Embassy there in Paris for pulling all of this together and working with everyone to ensure that you have what you needed to get started and then work us through all the way to today. We've done this across the United States. We've done these programs around the world, and every time I come to one of these, I'm just truly impressed by the work product that you guys put out. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing what you guys have for us today. As I said, I'm a huge fan of this program. We've worked with Adventure Partners for years, have done programs around the world and universities, in all parts of the globe across the United States. And what I would say is that this program that you've been a part of is a game changer. It really is. Why? And let me talk about it in two aspects. The first one is it's a game changer in that it's an issue set that we're really not used to working on, and it's a new issue set. So you were at the forefront of working on an issue that is a high priority for really all governments across the globe. But it's also a game changer in what it can do for you, and I'll highlight both of those in a second. So first, why? Why this issue set? It's very simple. In the last few years, we've seen an exponential rise, an increase of violence by what we call violent white supremacists, which is a subset of, again, what we call racially or ethnically motivated violent extremism. For those of you who go on to government jobs and bureaucracy like I have, you'll know that before you can tackle a problem, you must try to identify the problem. And so what we've tried to do is identify the problem through these terms: violent white supremacy, or racially or ethnically motivated violent extremism. At the end of the day, it's bad people doing bad things, and we try to do things to stop them. But what they've done, these REMV actors, is that they've really they've grown the last few years. They've been around for a very long time, but they've become much more brazen the last few years. They've carried out numerous attacks against synagogues, mosques, churches, all places of worship, gathering places, Walmarts, restaurants. I mean, you name it. They understand what's a soft target, a target that's not protected, a place where people go. And they understand the damage that can be done by trying to attack those areas. And of course, those of you who follow the news know that here in the United States, back in January at the US Capitol, we had our own event, which what we saw was a perfect storm of violent white supremacy, of this ideology that drives it, of misinformation and disinformation and racism and intolerance and xenophobia, all come together in this attack on our what we call most hallowed grounds, our US Capitol. So we know that these REMV actors, we know they're transnational. We know they're talking to everyone who's like-minded all over the world. We know they're using in-person dialogue, but more importantly, they're using online platforms. They're using end-to-end encrypted platforms. They're using coded language and symbols that we just are not really aware of. So they're finding new ways to talk to each other, to radicalize, to recruit, to mobilize, and inspire. And at the heart of it, right, at the heart of it is this intolerance, this bigotry, this racism, this intolerance of others. And it's this intolerance of others that's deep-seated, but then it grows and it gets, again, mobilized into action. So how do we counter it? That's the question we ask every day. How do we counter it? And as governments, we do everything that we can to try and respond, to try and prevent. But we understand that this is a different issue set. And as a society, we need to do much more to counter what we call those conditions conducive, that deep-seated racism, anger, intolerance, and hatred. We need to counter those conditions conducive. We need to look at the environment that is right for all of this radicalization and extremism that leads to violence. And we need to do so while ensuring that we're protecting our fundamental human rights, our basic civil rights, and of course, our civil liberties. That includes things like the protection of freedom of speech and freedom of expression. So as we look to counter it, we should never be in the business of stopping speech or stopping access to the internet or platforms. What we need to do is build better programs and initiatives, better narratives. So when you have someone who's got that deep-seated anger and vitriol and hatred, and they're looking for like-mindeds, when they go out looking for it, they're not going to find the hatred, the anger, the racism, and the bigotry. They're going to find your work. They're going to find the programs and initiatives that you and the programs that Peer-to-Peer and Adventure Partners has created over the years. They're going to find those programs, and hopefully it will get them off-ramped and into sort of I don't want to say a normal life, but a normal life away from that racism, intolerance, hatred, and bigotry. So that's the second reason why this is a game changer, because the programs that come out of the Adventure Partners, the peer-to-peer programming, they live on. You may have heard a lot of stories where students have created these programs and initiatives, and they've gotten seed money after the semester was over, and they've been able to make jobs out of what they created through this program. Your programs may become household names. I know off the top of my head, programs like Dare to Be Gray or Fate, From Apathy to Empathy. These are programs that were developed through peer-to-peer, yet they've lived on. Apps that have been created still exist on my phone and are still out there that can be downloaded. Again, all part of this program. So it's a game changer. And the final thing I'll say is I've seen it personally as a game changer for me. A couple of years ago, we were doing the launch of peer-to-peer in US universities. And there was a university called Pennsylvania State University. So I took my daughter, who was 17 at the time, still in high school, thinking about what to do with her life in college and what to study. So I took her to Pennsylvania State University when I spoke at the first class, and we talked about radicalization, extremism, and what these programs are intended to do. And I'm asking students questions, and these are very senior students. They were master's level students or seniors or juniors in college. Again, advanced studies programs. And I was asking questions and they were raising their hand with good answers. And then I asked one question and I saw my daughter raise her hand and I said, oh my God, what is she going to say? And she had an answer right on point. And so I asked her afterwards, why did you answer that question? And she said, it's the most interesting thing I've heard throughout my entire student career. So now 3 years later, she's getting ready to graduate from college with a degree in international studies and national security based on what she heard that day at Pennsylvania State University, but more importantly, interacting with those other students who are sitting in the same exact chairs that you're in today. So like I said, I cannot wait to see what you've produced. I thank you so much for allowing me just a few minutes to say hello. And I wish you all the best of luck. Thanks again and take care.
Thank you for that. So now I'll explain a little bit about how today's going to go. We will have presentations from our top two teams, the University of Toulouse and the University of Strasbourg. And after each team gives their presentation, we will all have a chance to ask questions and hear a little bit more about the project. So without further ado, I will hand it over to the University of Toulouse for their presentation.
The interpreter has no sound and cannot interpret the video as it's been shown here. Okay.
I'm sorry, all, there's a little glitch with the sound. We should have that fixed shortly.
Bonjour, je suis Amine Joadine, je représente l'Université Toulouse-Jean Jaurès dans le cadre du projet.
Hello, my name is Amine Joadine and I represent the University of Toulouse. What is La Diff Ensemble? La Diff Ensemble, for some people it's a game, for others it's reality. For those, it's a question of what happens when people make jokes that actually are not funny. And so the idea is to immerse people in the everyday life of someone who is subjected to hatred. These people, some students are looking for their friend Adam and they can't find Adam. And so they go through a series of questions and answers and that look at the racism that Adam is subjected to. And the idea is to look at discrimination and racism. Why La Diff Ensemble? That's a good question. It's a question that came to me during the first lockdown in France. And I realized that after I'd gone through all of the video games and that I started wondering what other people were doing during lockdown. And I realized that I learned that the sale of board games had exploded during lockdown. And so I realized that I assumed that everyone was doing just like myself. I'm 30 and I was wondering if the society looked like me. So a friend of mine who was a college teacher or high school teacher suggested putting out a questionnaire. And so we put out two questionnaires, one on board games and another on social networks. And when I saw the results of the questionnaires, I realized that people didn't play board games very often, that it was not really a reflex, that they sometimes played with their families, but that not very often. But on social networks, young people didn't really pay attention to their image, the image that they projected on the social networks. And so the idea was sort of the result of what I saw of on internet. 17% of young people have been the victim of cyberbullying. And so I wanted to look at that. And so I thought, well, what if we put together a project that was based on this, and that was both a teaching project and a playful project. And so I decided to make this game to explain that our actions have consequences. And I thought it was interesting to look at that question and to get people to look at the question. So why make it into a game? It's not just a game. It's an idea, first off. I know that our brains only learn in comparison to other things. So understanding what people feel when they're subjected to hatred and discrimination was really about looking at how do we think about other people's suffering. So how do people understand this, in how do they understand the repetition, getting people to understand that repetition plays an important role as well through these little stories, these little stories about Adam and what he goes through. And these are situations that actually do exist. And people think very often that they're making jokes, but they're not funny. Those jokes are not funny. And so it's a question about, the idea was to make people realize what the impact of these discriminatory remarks would, and to making sure that that people understand that things do not go unnoticed. What were the difficulties that you came across? Well, difficulties? Well, there were difficulties, yes. First of all, it was the first time I participated in this project like this. So I was not very experienced, and that led to certain difficulties, a little bit of anguish sometimes as well, because I couldn't always find the right solutions. But in fact, it was also difficult because I was doing this on my own. Of course, I was helped by the university and others, but I had to manage my own time, my own resources. It was when you work in a team, you can share responsibilities, you learn from each other, and you share visions, and that's interesting too. So what about now? Well, now that this is finished, everything is actually starting. It's just the beginning. And I'd like to test this in junior highs and in high schools to see what kind of reaction there would be, and maybe develop the scenario even more, maybe do multiple possible endings, and not just limit this to school environments, but maybe sports environments as well. I'd like to develop this further and to try to. This is a game that's very easy to play. It would be very easy to translate as well. So it's something that could be really spread very broadly. And I'd also like to contact board game producers and see if they could help us develop this game as well, see how they could share their own experience. I would like that very much. And a last word? Yes. First, I'd like to thank the American Embassy for having invited me, and thank the University of Toulouse-Jean Jaurès for having helped me with this project, and Mary Scher, who was an absolutely endless source of help and resources, and looking at new ideas and new ways of working. Thank you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Now, if I could ask everybody who would like to participate in the Q&A to either raise your hand, you can do it visually or through through Zoom, or you can send messages through the chat if you would like me to ask the question for you. So let's see. The questioning, the line of questioning is now open. Well, I will actually start with a question of my own for Jean-Jean. If you received funding, what would be the next step that you would take with this project?
Hi. If I receive funding, the next step of the project would be to first create a budget and figure out how much it would cost to develop it, make it a bit more, I would say, professional somehow. I would add illustrations to the cards, and the second step would be to go find classrooms in college and high schools to test the game and have new evaluation, new surveys to know what impact it has, really, how efficient it is, and then with those surveys and with those results, try to create the game the most efficient possible and with the most impact again.
Okay, so we got a question from Sean. Excellent concept. Please talk more about the scavenger hunt activities involved in the game.
Scavenger hunt. I could use some help in translating scavenger, if you don't mind.
So a scavenger hunt is when you are told you have to go out and look for something.
I'm sorry, I do not understand the question, actually.
Sorry, could one of the game activities?
Oh, yeah, okay. It's supposed to be a game that... okay, thank you. The way I saw it, it was not really a scavenger hunt. It was more of a board game in a classroom. And what I wanted to do was first talk with the students, ask them what they think about hate speech, how they would define it, how they would use how they would describe or define microaggression, and try to figure out in their everyday life how they behave, and if they feel like they are part of the solution or the problem, I would say. Then make them play the game. The game is literally cards that you have in your hands. Like, you're gonna have a scenario begins, like I said, in the classroom, and when you don't see your friends, like, okay, what are you going to do? Are you going to talk to the person that is next to you? If so, take the card 17, for instance. Are you going to try to call him? So take the card 22. And each card leads you to another path. So it's not really a scavenging hunt, but it's a reflection. And during the game, you find some situations that are supposed to be like jokes or supposed to be not that much of a problem. But in the end, like with the scenarios during the game and with the repetition of this situation, you can understand that the fact that Adam is actually black is the reason why people will pretend that maybe he's good at basketball, or maybe he's not that French, not as French as any others. And that's what I wanted to show through the game, like the fact that we insist upon the fact that he is different. And I wanted to show after the game, I wanted to talk with the students and say, okay, what did you think? Have you ever been in this kind of situation? Have you ever had this kind of comments that you thought were jokes, but weren't taken as jokes by the people that received them? And the idea is like to implement this kind of change and this other way of thinking to the students.
Great. And we have received another question from Tony. Not seeing the actual design of the board game, can you explain the feel and look of it? Is it cartoonish photos, or is it a fun feel, or does it have a serious tone? Do you feel the look of the board game was on point and worked, or will you make some design changes to enhance board effectiveness?
The first design, I mean, I have designed the logo. That's the one you see in the video, and that was the beginning. Turns out I do not have the designing skill necessary to have illustrations for the card. I've tried, it was a total failure. So what I wanted to do was, I wanted the drawings and the illustrations to be serious, like based on comics, for instance, or with the same size, maybe not the same quality, but at least I do not want the game to feel funny, because it would send the wrong message, according to me. I want it to be serious. I want it to be relatable for the people that play it. And so yeah, that's where I wanted to go with the design.
Great. Let's see. Any other questions? Well, I will tell you from my seat on the judging panel that this was a very, very innovative concept. And we found it to be extremely well thought out and just a great idea that nobody in our group had considered before, using a board game to try to reach this target population. And we really admired the audience analysis that had gone into it. So that was very interesting to see. And let's see, I'm sorry, we have another question. Awesome concept. What, with the different age groups you are trying to reach, what is the main goal for participation and engagement?
I'm gonna read the question. Sorry.
Sure.
Let's see it. Sorry. Can you repeat the question, please? Sorry.
Sure. Awesome concept. With the different age groups you are trying to reach, what is the main goal for participation and engagement?
The main goal to me is I really wanted to target people between 14 and 16 because it's when you create your identity. From the work, I'm currently working on a PhD focusing on extremism and violence, especially on the internet, and how hate group recruit through social media. And I realized that one of the most important problem and the most common weak point is an identity crisis. The reason why I was targeting to 14 to 16-year-old people because I really wanted them. I think they are the most fragile population, and they're trying to build themselves out of their parents, and they're trying to find another group that will accept them not only for being part of a family. And that's the moment that is the most important to create someone. And when someone builds his own personality, it's when he realizes that he has his own identity. But building your identity requires a context, I would say, and it requires people that are good and do not want any kind of evil from you. So yeah, I felt like this fragility was a good moment and a good age to create the engagement and make them realize that it can really go fast, and you can forget who you are very fast, especially when you don't really know and when you're building it.
Great. And Brett asked, what additional scenarios could you envision for the game?
I wanted to, actually, to be honest with you, when I had the first idea of the game, I knew that the US Embassy really wanted to focus on ethnical issues, and I really wanted to work on misogyny. And because I realized that in my everyday life, it's not a problem. Gender issues doesn't rely on the age or the social context or anything. It's everywhere you can see this, and everywhere you have this kind of situation when you're going to make fun of a woman because she's a woman. And every time you try to call out someone about that, he's going to say, you know what, it was just a joke. But in the end, it's not. So yeah, I think the second, if I had to create another scenario, it would be about misogyny.
And here's a question from Mireille. First of all, great project. However, I was wondering, what would you improve in the game to make it more inclusive for other minorities?
That is a very good question. To be honest, I thought that I would create different scenarios, and each one would focus on one kind of hate speech, I would say. I never thought about how to maybe like what you're asking me, like we send the same message, but towards about hate in itself and in general, right?
Yeah.
And well, if you could give me 30 seconds, I'm quite sure I can find an idea. I think it would be interesting to maybe in the same kind of concept try to talk about a group of people that would feel rejected and create their own group and their own society inside the school, for instance. It would be a private group, and maybe it would be interesting to make them create a group that forbids white people to be inside and see the interaction and see how we've gone this far. Maybe we could see like two people that are friends since they're in like kindergarten, with a 4-year-old, like an Arabic girl with a white man, and when they reach the age of 15, they stop talking to each other. This girl joins the group, the other one is excluded from it, and how they recreate a bound and try to destroy this dynamic.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, we have time for one more question. Let's see. Which was more important to this endeavor, your coursework or your experiences outside the university? Did coursework and experiences inform each other? Thank you.
Wow. I think, yeah, they both fed each other's. It's part of my coursework, of course, because that's what I'm studying. This is the topic of my PhD. But my everyday life gave me a lot of hints and a lot of knowledge about the situations. I was born in Algeria, and I arrived in France when I was maybe 1 or 2 year old. But I've always had this double culture, and I was very lucky to have parents that just taught me that I was both French and Algerian, not half of one and half the other, not more one, more the other. Every day, every time I had these issues, every time I was facing this kind of situation that could have triggered me, they always told me, you have nothing to prove because what you have is a wealth. And what you have makes you wealthier than the others. You can understand things that they can't even imagine. So that's for my personal course, and that's what led me to think that maybe some people do not have this chance. And I can see, especially in France, there's a lot of cases when I was saying radicalization, especially after the terror attack of 2015. Lots of the people that joined ISIS were people that were having this ID crisis because in France they were told that they were not French, and their parents were telling them that they were not French either. So they're forced to live in a country that do not feel like they belong in. So yeah, I think both helped me, and that's why I came up with this project.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jean-Jour. This was very, very interesting and really a great initiative. And now we will turn to the University of Strasbourg for their presentation.
Donc bonjour à tous.
Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about our campaign Equals that we implemented in the context of the Equals Challenge. The idea was to fight against racism, anti-Semitism, hate, and Islamophobia. So first of all, let me tell you what inspired us to run this campaign. First, we did some research. We tried to understand what were the most efficient campaigns, how we could really shed light on these issues and attract people's attention. We saw many campaigns dealing with racism, but not many on offensive messages, and that's what we wanted to talk about. So we found one campaign ran by the French government that shed light on racism, and it included a reminder and a QR code with a video. But we wanted to really be able to target the right audience. Our target audience was people, students in our university, but then also we wanted to target other students in other universities in Strasbourg and potentially the whole Strasbourg population. And it's quite rare to see and hear blatantly racist comments at university. So then we looked at a campaign that was ran in Geneva. So there was a poster, for example, that said, "I am not racist, but," and this showed that you can also simply suggest the stereotype, bring it to mind. You shouldn't actually mention it openly because otherwise it can backfire. Then during a discussion, we also looked at a campaign run by Le Secours Populaire that was shown in French train stations and metro stations. You can see portraits of children with a sticker on the forehead to remind the Guess Who game. And you can see here that on the sticker, there's written poor. And it says here that you shouldn't put a label on someone because it's not this person's fault if he or she is in this situation. And so then we looked at how we could suggest a stereotype. Um, because if we were to openly mention a stereotype, then that would mean that we would actually agree with it. And that's not obviously the case. And then we looked at the ADIA campaign, and we thought that it was the most relevant for us. Here you can see some posters. There's one person and some text as well. So first you see a headline. It's a shocking comment. And then you see a text in smaller letters underneath. So here we see a pregnant woman. The headline says that this woman is a burden, but then it says a poids lourd in French, so a heavyweight in her discipline. So the headline was rather negative, whereas the rest of the text is actually a lot more positive. So here we're simply mentioning the stereotype, but we're bringing it to the people's mind, and I think that's something that really inspired us. Then we tried to define these concepts of racism, anti-Semitism, hate. These are very important concepts in that they need to be defined without actually using preconceived ideas or stereotypes, because these are actually based on preconceived ideas themselves. So racism is an ideology which would lead to the creation of a hierarchy amongst races. It's so racism and xenophobia are often taken one for the other, but they're very different concepts. So one can actually be xenophobic, but still appreciate people of color, and but a racist person can also be xenophobic. And we see that there's more and more what we call commonplace racism. Um, so these are jokes that many people actually take part to, even racialized people, and in the end, it's still racism. It's racism in disguise. So we wanted to make sure that we also shed light on this type of commonplace racism. So thanks to Mary Scherer, thanks to our teachers as well, we created these posters. We have four main elements here: the main text, with the first name of the person, their studies, their project. Then there's our slogan. There's a QR code as well that will take you to our social network and our logo as well. So in order to have better results, we also ask for a professional photographer to take pictures. We also made sure that we had that we suggested the stereotypes so that people would have time to think about the preconceived ideas that they might have. So the idea was to indirectly mention these stereotypes and these preconceived ideas that might be interiorized, so that people can really think about these. Then regarding the rollout of the campaign, so first we started by defining all the key terms, all the concepts that we wanted to highlight in the campaign, and then we created a survey and disseminated the survey. We also sent the same survey at the end of the campaign so that we could measure the impact of our campaign. Then we also created our Instagram page so that we would have more visibility, that would be present on social networks, and we shared this account on our own accounts as well so that we would have more visibility. Once we created the account, we also posted a teaser so that we would announce the launch of the campaign. We then uh, went to put up the posters in several key places in Strasbourg. And we also showed these posters on our Instagram page so that they would be more visible and that as many people as possible would actually see the posters. Then we decided to organize some events, and we'll talk about them later on. And we also created an Instagram post to explain how we could join these organizations if people were interested. And to conclude, we also created a video that would give an account of the campaign. And thanks to, so we had an interview of Mrs. Caillé as well, our teacher, who supported us all throughout the campaign. And this was a very popular video. It was shared by many people. So we ran into some issues during this project. First of all, regarding the schedule, because we were not in physical presence, so we were working remotely from our home, which means that we had to work with very short deadlines. First of all, we had some issues as well because some of our free days were actually bank holidays, and some of the people that we wanted to interview were not available. It was also difficult for us to reach our target audience because most of the students in Strasbourg were actually working from home, studying from home, and obviously this had a strong impact on our campaign. So we had to change a few things, and we had to postpone the launch of the campaign as well. And we could see as well in the survey that there was a lack of commitment as well within our target audience. And also we had issues organizing the events because the protective measures and the occupancy limitations, we could not actually go through with these events, and it's a shame because it would have brought a lot of meaning to this campaign. So regarding these events, so we wanted to organize some events so that we could reach as many people as possible. So the idea was to organize roundtable events so that we would raise awareness on racism and its impact. So in order to organize these roundtables, we got in touch with several organizations who fight against racism, with Salima Tenfish and Sarah Difala. They wrote Beurette, un fantasme français. And it was very interesting to work with them during this project, and they agreed to take part to our roundtable event. So the first roundtable took place on the 26th of May at 8 p.m. Working with as organizations based in Strasbourg who which fight against racism. So we had the International League Against Racism and Anti-Semitism. LICRA fights against racism, but also brings legal support to the victims. We also had Ambition Jeunesse, and we also had the movement against racism and for friendship between peoples, which is a member of the National Advisory Committee on Human Rights, which fights against um, discriminatory actions and comments as well. So we talked about the impact of racism, of hurtful comments, and hate speech as well. And participants were able to ask questions. And the second roundtable event took place on the day after, the 27th of May at 8 p.m. as well. So with the presence of Salima Tenfish, co-author of Beurette, un fantasme français. And she talked about the situation of French women of North African descent, because Beurette is a woman of North African descent, but now it has become a concept and a stereotype of a stupid woman with too much makeup. And obviously you can see how demeaning that is. And Selima Tenfish also gave us an example that Beurette has actually become a category on a porn website, which of course is very disparaging for women of North African descent. And many people take part to this event. And the last step is that we're going to be showing the posters again back in September at our university and around the campus. And we are also going to be organizing educational activities, trying to have students analyzing the posters. So first of all, we'd like to thank Adventure Partners and the McCain Institute of the Arizona State University. Thank you very much for providing us with the opportunity to take part to such a project, and thank you very much for having invited us.
Thank you very much. As I see the University of Strasbourg team turning on their cameras, thank you. I'm so pleased to welcome you guys here today. You did fantastic work. It was really great. It was a really great program to read about. And I speak for the entire judging panel once again. Your audience analysis was very, very thorough and very, very well done. And we were very impressed. So now I would like to open it to Q&A from everybody who is here. So please send me your questions or raise your hand. And we already have the first one from Mohammed. Excellent and timely campaign, inspiring. Did the campaign also include addressing prejudice, discrimination, and far-right narratives against refugees, migrants, asylum seekers in the EU, or any specific country in the EU? If yes, what tools were applied and what strategies adopted? Now you guys will have to decide who takes the question.
Bonjour. Pour
Hello.
répondre à la question, on
Well,
s'est surtout
to answer the
concentré
question,
sur
we mostly
le
focused
racisme
on
en France et
racism in France,
celui qui concernait les gens
racism
de
regarding
notre entourage et surtout
people
les
that surrounded
étudiants.
us, students
Donc,
in particular.
on ne s'est pas
So
concentré
we did
sur
not target
les autres pays,
other countries,
malheureusement, mais je pense que c'est ce qu'on aurait fait par la
unfortunately, but I think
suite
that's what
si
we
le
would have
projet
liked
avait
to
duré
do
plus longtemps.
had the project been on a longer period.
Great. And a question from Tony. Absolutely impressive and impactful campaign. I love the integration of your powerful postering with your other social media channels. Great job. And two questions. One, given what appears to be high visibility campaign, did media cover it given the topic? And two, your campaign is highly worthy of sustainment and continuing on now that it has ended. Are there plans to continue and how are you going to do it?
Right. So we published a press release. It was then sent out by the communication services of the university. And regarding future steps in September, so we'll show the posters again around our campus, but also in Strasbourg to make sure that we reach as many people as possible. And we'll also continue with an educational analysis. So it'll be part of the students' program. They'll have to analyze the posters. And we'll also try to get in touch with some researchers so that we can discuss the issues of racism within the university so that we can continue to develop this particular issue.
Great. I know you mentioned in your video that you had done surveys before and after the program. What were the results of the surveys?
So regarding the first survey, we had 190 people answering. Most of them were students, students in IT and communications in particular. And there was one key question in this survey. Have you have you ever been a victim of racism or hate speech at university? Because we wanted to focus on a university, and so 17% have answered no, and 82% have said yes. So we realized that racism was actually an issue that concerned most students, even though that's not something that we could directly see. It was more indirect, but very much present.
Yeah, that's fascinating and also upsetting. But I'm glad that you were able to learn that. And it just shows how pervasive the problem is, even though I don't know that most people realize it. So one other thing that I was very impressed with when I looked at your project was how well you used the small amount of money that you received. The posters look very professional, and I thought it was very smart to put them up in places that were free. But as somebody who sometimes has to make graphics, I know how expensive it is to buy photos. And how can you tell the group here today how you were able to make those posters for only, I believe, $750?
En fait, concernant le photographe, en fait, c'est
Well, regarding the photographer, we got in touch with him through someone from our class, and so we got in touch with him, and because we really wanted the posters to look professional, and we didn't want to simply take pictures with a phone. And then so regarding where we actually put them up, we thought about the places where we wanted them, and we printed about 60 posters. So we had some quotes by various printers, and so we compared prices and quality, and that's where we found the right solution at the right budget, and then we simply had to buy the equipment to simply put them up. And to complete as well what Margot just said, we really wanted to work together as much as possible, so that we would also try to minimize costs. And regarding posters and the photographer, it was really teamwork. So we all worked together. We tried to reach out to other people. We looked at people in our class, whether they were the new photographer or not. And so it was really teamwork, and that's what allowed us to launch our campaign.
Fantastic. I believe we have a hand raised in the audience. If it's possible to allow that person to speak. If not, you can always just send me the question in the chat. Sometimes these systems are a little bit tricky. Okay, it doesn't look like, I'm guessing, I think you're on mute, the person who's trying to ask the question. Okay, well, unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be working. Sorry about that. So we'll move on to the next portion. And I just want to say to obviously both teams here, but really to all the teams, that this was an exceptionally difficult year to do this project. It really, really was. There was a short time frame, and you were dealing with a pandemic that shut down the entire world. And it's hard to put things in people's faces when their faces aren't here. You know, you can't just go to the place where the students gather at a university because there are no student gatherings. So this was exceptionally challenging, I believe. And I think that both teams that are our top two teams really rose to that challenge. And I do want to say it's both teams did such a great job with audience analysis. That was so impressive to us. And it's really the first step of a successful communications campaign. You need to know who you're talking to. And both teams did a great job with that. And for the Strasbourg team, especially the way you used your money was very intelligent. It wasn't a lot of money, but you wouldn't know it looking at the product. It looked professional. It looked very well done, and you should be very proud of yourselves. And both campaigns found a way to address very difficult topics in creative ways. And I love that you didn't reinforce negative stereotypes, because that is a trap that we can fall into. We want to say, don't think like that. And then we say exactly how we don't want the person to think, you know? So I think that was a really great way to go about this. So it was a very good discussion when we were judging all of the submissions. Both of these two teams present here today really, really impressed us, very much so. And I want to thank everybody for your incredibly hard work. And we do recognize that this was very difficult. And in addition to your normal schoolwork. So thank you so much for committing to this program. And now it is my great pleasure to announce the winner of the peer-to-peer challenge in France is the Université de Strasbourg. And we have a little certificate to show you. And really congratulations. And you will receive a cash prize to continue with the work. And we hope that you will, because it's a great idea. So if, I don't know if, well, I would love to hear actually from Professor Patricia Caillet, who was the fearless leader of this team.
Nous tenons vraiment, we're very happy for our team today. We want to thank you for letting us participate in this program. We are very grateful to you. We are very grateful to Mary's support. And also, I would like to say that it has been a very good experience for the students who are first-year students. They have worked under difficult conditions, but I was really happy that they had this opportunity. So once again, thank you. And we will go on working on the topic with the help of young researchers in the coming year.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would also like to mention, we also had great submissions from the Université de Grenoble-Alpes and another team from Université de Strasbourg. So I would also like to thank, of course, Adventure Partners and the Arizona State University, the McCain Institute, and from all of us at the U.S. Embassy in Paris and U.S. Mission to France. Thank you for taking part and have a wonderful summer. Bye.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.